Welcome to the last reading from The Day We Met the Queen by Angelique Q. Ralph. It's the last chapter, chapter 7, called The State and Its Secrets. Meeting the Queen and eating finger sandwiches the size of really tiny fingers and 13 different kinds of mini cakes, and getting to ask her all the questions we wanted to ask, and playing with her dogs and holding the crown she likes to wear best because it's the lightest and doesn't give her a headache, made us all so happy that I don't think we'll ever not be happy ever again. Even Uncle Lenny, who was allowed to meet the Queen for 20 whole seconds before being given tea and cake in her waiting room, said he had never known a day like it, and that it would stay with him for the rest of his life. I think as happy as she made us, we made the Queen happy too, because after Ahmet showed her his bag and we all helped explain why it was so important, and he had asked her his questions about wars and handbags, and we'd all asked our last question about how she could help other children like Ahmet too, she said she had never been asked questions like them before, and that she was proud of us for being brave enough to ask them. But she also told us that everything she said in the palace was off the record, which meant that everything she said needed to stay a secret, even if it was something as small as knowing what her favourite fruit was. I guess it's because the Queen doesn't want anyone to record what she's saying in her own house, as it's where she has to do all of her state work and her homework too. So when we got back to school and Mrs. Saunders told us we were going to do another special assembly so that we could tell everyone about our visit, to make up for the one that had been stink-bombed, we didn't really have anything new to say. We couldn't tell anyone what her answers to our 10 most important questions were, or what her dogs' names were, or what cake she liked the best to eat, or if she wore a wig or not, or if she liked the picture on the money and the coins we used, even though we knew the answers now. All we were allowed to talk about was what we had worn and what food we had eaten and how many different cups of tea we had and how many times I sneezed because I had forgotten I was allergic to dogs, even the Queen's ones, and about how much Ahmet had loved telling the Queen about his bag and his mum and dad and sister Sarah, and how the Queen hadn't minded smelling the bag at all. After that second assembly, Ahmet was still famous, but I think his red rucksack became even more famous, because now that everyone knew the Queen had smelled it, they wanted to smell it too. And even though I couldn't share any of the Queen's secrets with Mum or Uncle Lenny, they didn't mind, because they got to share in all of the things that happened straight after. Things like MP Fry being forced to resign the very next week, and all because some people with whips in his party said that they didn't like how he had treated Ahmet and his red bag, and how he had insulted the Queen. I didn't know people in Parliament carried whips with them, but I guess that's why so many of them have briefcases. And I guess once you've been whipped, you can't go back, because MP Fry was never heard from again. That same week, Mr. Irons also tried to tell his story on the news about how Ahmet was the one to blame for all the changes at our school, and how he was costing the school money because he needed extra help from people like Ms. Hemsley. Mr. Irons even tried to say he had lost his job because of these things, and that Ahmet was to blame for everything that had happened to him. But then the reporters talked to parents from the school and found out the truth about why he didn't have a job anymore, and how he had been a bad teacher, and after just 2 interviews, he disappeared too. I hope we never have to see him, or his moustache, or hear his whistling nose ever again. And the very next week after that, my guess that Brendan the bully was behind the stink bomb attacks was proven right. Well, nearly right, because there had been lots and lots of videos taken by the world's press at the school on the day of our first assembly. Someone had found one that showed who had set all the stink bombs off. Brendan the bully, Liam, Chris, and 6 other students were all caught. But even though the cameras had caught them, no one could figure out who was the leader. So instead of one person being punished, they all got a month's detention and were never allowed into assembly again without having their pockets checked in front of everyone. I still know deep down that Brendan the bully was the leader, because none of the other bullies cared about hurting Ahmet as much as he did. But he hasn't come after Ahmet or any of the rest of us since. I was glad, because I had asked the Queen to help me find proof, and I knew that she would. I guess she must have asked her special guards and officers to make the world's press check their cameras again, otherwise Brendan the bully might never have been caught. And something else happened because of the day we met the Queen. Something that feels more important than anything else, even us knowing secrets. And that's the very big debate that is happening in Parliament right now. Every day for 2 whole weeks, Mum has been bringing the newspaper home and letting me stay up late to watch the news on TV and try to understand it all. And at school, me and Josie and Tom and Michael and Ahmed have been asking Mrs. Ken and Ms. Hemsey to help us learn about it too. The very big debate is a word fight, like the one we saw outside the palace, except this one is between MPs and doesn't involve any signs. MPs are debating to see if they can keep the border gates open so that the whole country can help refugee children like Ahmet stay safe from wars and be with their families. I don't know what's going to happen, but now I know that some of the most powerful people in the country care and want to help, and Mum says that's a good start. Mum also says that the Queen isn't the one who made the very big debate happen because she's not allowed to tell MPs what to talk about or what to do. But I don't think queens and kings always need to tell people what to say or do to show that they care. Sometimes they can show that they care in other ways, like by posting a very special handwritten invitation, or by sending a car with lion flags to come and rescue you when angry people are shouting, or by hosting a tea party in their palace where they give you finger sandwiches the size of really tiny fingers and 13 different kinds of mini cake, and they tell you and your best friends all of the state's secrets and also let you show them your socks. The end.